This is our space where we've grown. Real talk, no filter, just the truth. Navigating life from the old to the youth. Laughter, wisdom, and
Grief is a roller coaster. One minute you're sobbing, the next minute you're laughing at something totally inappropriate. In this episode, we're diving into the aftermath of losing our dad, how we process emotions in the most chaotic way, I guess, and ADHD way as possible. Dark humor, 100%. Random emotional spirals, check. And a brutally honest look at what healing really looks like. You know it. If you've ever felt like your grief experience doesn't fit into the little molds that they make for everyone, then this one's for you.
I said this before, and I want to make sure everybody, again, I'm going to state in this episode, everybody grieves in their own way. We may be doing it differently. If this upsets or triggers you in any way, or if you are triggered when speaking about grief, you may not want to further listen, as we do have a totally different perspective.
Don't worry, be happy. What is freaking up? My name is Eve.
My name is Sarah.
And we are burnt out perfectionists, as I have to enunciate greatly because last time I did this, it was that we happen to have it. If you heard our last episode, which we just recorded, so if our voices sound a little phlegmy, you know why.
Yeah, but I didn't cry. High five to me. Woo!
We discussed the topic about grief, more specifically about our dead dad, because we are a part of the Dead Dad Club.
Whoop, whoop. And whoop, we might make jackets.
Oh my god, I would love to have a jacket that said Dead Dad Club.
Yo, like a varsity jacket with leather.
I was thinking embroidered crew neck.
Oh, of course you're thinking embroidered crew neck, and I'm thinking varsity cute,
I'm a hot person.
Yeah, I know.
So with the last episode, we dove in kind of the experience of actually losing him, the day of and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now we thought we would discuss kind of how we've adjusted, because it's been just over 2 years.
Correct.
And how our lives have changed and stuff like that, and without the reminders of our dad dying.
Yeah.
We don't cry when we say his name. So, Sarah, how's your life changed since Dad died?
Well, there's a lot less funny sayings in my life, may I say. And I'm a little bit down on not knowing all the up-and-coming rock bands.
Hey, I've been pretty good at keeping up track.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot of things, right? I'm dealing with the additional things as I spoke about in the other thing. It's every once in a while, my kid will be like, oh, remember when I did this with Papa? And I'm like, yeah. And we'll talk about it. And I make sure I stay super positive, because I want her, for those 4 years of her life where she saw him almost every single day, for the last couple of years, that she knew who he was and the jokes that he made and the person that he was and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But I don't just sit there and dwell on the fact that Dad died. He would be so fucking annoyed. If he could show up, he'd be like, so what are you doing with your life? We're not really death anniversary people. We're more we understand when the day is. We know when the day is. But we don't we're not really the let's do a barbecue, whatever. Sometimes we'll just buy food because depending on whose mental state is what. Usually it's just one. Food will be purchased instead. Sometimes we have it together. Sometimes we have it apart. There's only been two. I think we did one together and one apart.
I started a mini tradition. So I make chocolate cupcakes.
Yeah.
Well, I made a chocolate cake. And then for some reason, I made a chocolate cake the first anniversary. And then everybody came over and started eating it. And I was like, okay, this was just for me, but thanks.
I couldn't have eaten chocolate cake, but you make the best bakery items. They're so good.
Yeah. But other than that, how have you felt? What you came to Dad for a lot of things,
Oh yeah, I came to Dad for a ton of things. Did it make me a little bit more independent? Yes, I think when it came to stuff, or I would think back to other situations and be okay, if that was the advice during said situation, maybe it would be blah 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 blah. I feel I put up with a lot less shit than what I kind of used to. I would be a little bit more okay, well, maybe I'll do this and blah, 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 blah. And now I'm I don't really fucking care. I'll just look at someone and be I don't like that. Or I'll just avoid it altogether, which could be healthy, could not be healthy. I don't really fucking care. And it's kind of like guiding that, or like keeping those like parenting things that him and mom did.
Mhm.
And like remembering that like when I'm with my kids, so I'm not like, I don't know. I mean, in certain aspects, I am a helicopter mom when it comes to like the playground and stuff. That's just like safety in general. I'm very safety conscious because of dad. The next thing is our dad was sick for a really long time. And it wasn't just the hard stuff, but all the other stuff. There was almost like a certain, as much as I do miss him and wish he was here, there was a certain heaviness that was almost removed. Either that was like mentally, physically, like the chronic worry.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned previously, unless editing Sarah took it out, but anytime I was coming to the house and I saw an ambulance, and the street's on an ambulance run, so that's where like it's while they're waiting to get a call or something, they drive within the area. I would see it and my brain would be like, don't turn onto their street. Anytime I got a text or a phone call, I would be worried. Anytime I got, especially if it was like a FaceTime, I was like, who died? There was just like all of those aspects of things where I would be like paranoid. I still hate answering my phone. That's a totally different other thing.
It's so bad to the fact that I turned her read receipts on for our conversation because I was like, bitch, are you just not looking at it? Or are you looking at it and forgetting to text me?
I either look at them and forget to text them, or I look at them and go, nice. And then I like don't respond with like
I
anything.
know that she actually saw it.
Yeah, exactly. But there's that certain like, okay, well, I make food for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting there and I would make food for myself and I would be like, oh, okay, like, do you want anything else? Like I obviously I assist with like making stuff for like our brother and everything too, just like Eve does. And he would like forget or maybe not feel the best. I'd be like, hey, like, what do you want me to make you? Or I would see something at the store and go to grab something from. I think that's the one thing that sometimes gets me, as like, you guys are, hopefully this makes everybody laugh. Every single time a fucking tarp goes on sale, I'm like, oh my God, I should buy those. Because our dad would always buy tarps because they're useful for so many different things.
I think your biggest trigger was, especially in the first couple of months, was the sound of a diesel truck.
A sound of a diesel truck or any vehicle that looked very similar, or his work truck. Because obviously the company had to replace and continue doing the things.
No, it
And
actually shut down though.
I know it did eventually shut down, but they did have people who came through. So you would see people and you'd be like, oh. So it'd be like a very similar truck to his. It would be a certain way somebody laughed. At the beginning, it was like anybody who wore a Hawaiian shirt. It was like, oh my God. His he wore that. Those were his favorite things in the entire world. And I can't really think of a song that would instantly make me cry. I'm trying to think of one right now.
Oh, no. The one, so there's two.
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran's one. You would listen to it. Oh my God, what was it?
Oh my God.
Market Flowers?
I can't remember. Oh, there was like,
Oh no, Happier. Happier made you cry. And then last year when Dean Lewis came out with
oh no,
How Do I Say Goodbye?
fucking Visiting Hours.
That's what it was.
Fucking Visiting Hours. Ed Sheeran, do you like to take my soul and just shove it into my butthole or whatever the fuck? Like,
There's a specific lyric. So like at the end, if you haven't listened to the song, it was like it's basically him. I think it's talking to his grandma. I don't know if he's lost any.
he's talking, it's either his grandma or his grandpa.
So he says at the end, like, I wish that heaven had visiting hours.
Yes.
And then at the end of the song it says, I wish that heaven could have visiting hours, and I would ask them if I could take you home.
Yes.
And it was like that song, that point hit, and all you would hear from Sarah.
Okay, so this leads back to how you grieve differently in your life and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I have said this ever. So this is the weird, those like weird connection things that happen in the world. When I was a kid, like obviously I watched our mom's father pass away, and I was very young. And then I ended up watching like our dad's father pass away, and I was super close with him. We were like best friends. We did everything together. We had our favorite our favorite colors were the same. Like, we did all of this stuff. He loved candy just as much as I did. Yes, he got diabetes in the end. What a surprise. But, like, he was, as much as he was a business person, he was, like, a big kid, and he always wanted to have fun. Even if he wasn't the most flexible person, he would still take me to the playground, or we would go do car washes, or he would pick me up from school when I was sick. Like, there was those aspects of things, and it was hearing that and everything. I remember being like, man, wouldn't it be cool? Which also prefaced, I'm completely fucking obsessed with Halloween. And I was learning about like the concept. This was like a couple of years after our mom's dad died. I was at some like vacation Bible school or something, and we were learning about like, they called it All Saints Day or something. I'm totally going to screw this up. But like the original name in it was like, the idea was, and it's very similar in like a lot of like Latin culture, where it's like they come back to visit you. You don't see them, but they come back to visit you. So it's like Day of the Dead. It's very
Días de los Muertos.
Yeah, so it's like very parallel, very similar. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool that if every Halloween, not everybody, because in our case that would be several people, but if like they could just show up for 24 hours and hang out with us, and then they could go. And then I was like, I always had this, I would like state stuff like this all the time. And then that fucking song came out. And I was like, oh my God, I do wish that heaven had visiting hours. And Ed Sheeran's voice makes me happy and makes me cry like a giant fucking baby.
Well, and then about a year later, the song from Dean Lewis came out.
Yeah.
And it literally says, like, how can I say goodbye to someone who's been with me my whole damn life?
Yeah.
You gave me my name and the color of my eyes. And so, like, I just remember playing in the background, and I was like,
I know, you looked at me statistically.
I found like a big
Statistically.
Wow. I found that a big thing for me was that it's not that I had emotions, but it was that I was trying, like, I felt guilty that I didn't have them.
Yes.
Which also, so when a couple months after Dad died, we were looking up if we were grieving properly.
Oh, yeah, we Googled it because I was like, well, I'm a little bit different than you, but you're a little bit different. The other one seems like really upset. People on the autism spectrum fucking register things totally different. So that's totally fine. Like, it's very much like okay, it's done, moving on. Like, and then every once in a while they'll have like a moment. So they're watching something like a Marvel movie and you watch Iron Man pass away. Like, that connection is made. But, yeah, we were both like, are we doing this right?
If that doesn't show, like, our perfectionism, like, are we grieving properly?
Oh my God, let's do a deep dive rabbit hole on are we grieving?
Oh my God. We got, like, Enneagram grieving. We got something like that.
Plus, we had other people telling us that, like, we weren't registering it, or we weren't, like, it was weird.
No. It'll hit you one day.
Or
what?
It'll hit me one day. Ish, I'm upset right now.
So, yeah, so, like, do you feel like you said that you're, like, feel more independent?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Like, do you, like, if Dad was here,
yeah,
do you feel like your life would be any different?
I might feel less bad about, like, taking vacation time because I'm being the support worker for our brother. No, he was always just, like, the first time I had the voluntary departure program at the communication company and I was offered it. Obviously, I spoke to my husband first, but I had already made my decision. That is what I do. I make my own decision and I tell people what I did. And if you want to tell me something different, I'll probably tell you to go fuck yourself or just ignore you.
Unless it's me.
Yeah, unless you're like, yo, hold up. You need to take at least 24 hours if you have it. Like, take a breath. But that's the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember calling our dad and he's like, oh, this is fucking great. Like, what a fantastic opportunity. Like, I'm so excited for you. Like, what are your plans? Hint, hint. Because I lived in a different city. Like, are you going to be back? I'm like, yeah, can't afford. Even if I had a job, could barely afford living there with a kid. And B, like, yeah, I would love her to live in like a smaller area that doesn't have millions of people. I would like that kind of as close to 90s kid feeling as you can get. Obviously, the world is very different. There's a lot of creeps, but whatever. And I'm like, yeah, so like here, stuff like that. And I think that's like the whole thing is it's just like, I lost my train of thought.
I was like, I saw your brain just go,
Yeah. meh, clicky, clicky, worky, worky.
Like, you don't, like, you know, when people are like, oh, well, if I did this, maybe things would have been different. If
No, I don't have any regrets. I couldn't have changed anything. I was not a medical professional. No matter what, he would have driven me to work that day.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that aspect of it. I already renounced and said fuck you to the people who did it to us.
I love to preface, it was not me.
No, I mean, like, so it's like, I'm not a medical professional. I couldn't have prevented anything. I did my best. I did my due diligence. I did everything I did. I made sure I gave him a hug every single time before I went. And I think that was the whole thing, is I was always like, fuck you. Fuck you, Eve. Yes. No, but I always made sure that, like, I did certain things in case something happened. Fuck you. Broken.
Yeah. Well, Sarah's kind of registering life right now. A bit of a debrief is, like, after Dad died, I feel like the aspects of him that I would, like, ask things for, he was always like, don't be a wuss, like, you got this type thing. And I remember just being, like, the year prior was, I remember going to Mom and I was like, hey, I think something's wrong with me. I think I need to go to the doctor. And then, obviously, Dad died and stuff like that, and I was waiting for that to process. And so about a year later, I was like, no, like, I think I actually need to go to the doctor, and that's when I was diagnosed with ADHD. And for me, too, I was like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I don't have these emotions, because obviously Sarah had emotions, like, to an extent, but I was just like, I feel like I was very one end of the spectrum. And so I stumbled I stumbled onto this TikTok video of this older man, and I can't find it anymore. He might have removed it. And he was talking about ADHD, grief, and guilt. And he was like, every time I lost someone, it was always like, why aren't you feeling this? There's something wrong with it. And he goes, no, it's actually a thing. So I could, like, look at my family and be like, hey, this is what's going on. But on the flip side of that, I feel like as much as I wish he was here, I also feel like I don't have any, like, negative aspects of it. Like,
Yeah.
I knew it was going to happen sometime in my life. Yeah, it's obviously shitty. But I've also been able to do a lot of things outside of that. What? Have faith. Like, instead of going to him for it and been like, depending on his answer for things when he's younger, I instead could be like, no, like, I can do this type thing. That aspect of me, like, clicked on after he died. The couple things, like, I feel like after he died, obviously, I was trying to help a lot of people in our family and stuff like that with the processing. But I feel like I took more of the role on of, like, helper and, like, trying to fix everything.
Yeah.
So then that obviously led into, like, burnt out. But even, like, after he died, I had the opportunity to learn how to do a lot more things for myself, like the pool or, like, building stuff. Like, I was always building stuff with Dad anyway, but, like, if I couldn't do it, I would just be like, type thing. But now I'm like, oh, fuck, like, I actually have to do it.
Yeah, there was, I know a big thing for me is I was like, okay, fuck this shit. Like, I'm going to go get a full blood panel of every single thing. So that way I can get checked for all of the things. Yeah. That was a big thing after, is I was like, okay, like, we signed up for a gym membership, which we actually go to the gym
twice a week. But, like, I feel like, in a way, ever since Dad died, our relationship has changed a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, let me open the box.
Okay.
So prior to, and this might have also been age as well.
Yeah.
Is because you were a mom, obviously there was a lot of things that, like, I was like, I don't know, like, I don't, like, the struggles that you would have of, like, being a mom or stuff like that as being an adult. I couldn't comprehend it because I was like, oh, God, just talk to Mom or Dad. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And, like, younger, we would always hang out and stuff. But, like, now, I feel like our relationship is more, like, it's not codependent, but it's like, if anything, there's an issue, it's like we usually talk to each other first and then expand.
Oh, yeah. Like, we've decided, like, okay, we'll talk to each other about this. Like, I need an extra person to bounce this off of. we're similar, but not 100% the same. And we have different perspectives when it comes to stuff like this. By the way, I'd also like to preface that when you were like, oh, and then I was like before I cried.
Yeah.
There's The Visiting Hours by Ed Sheeran. I'm looping back for like 2 seconds. The fucking line that broke my soul, or the like verse, is, I wish that heaven had visiting hours so I could just show up and bring the news that she's getting older, and I wish that you met her, even though he had already like met Charlie, stuff like that. But it says, the things that she'll learn from me, I got them all from you. That is the first fucking verse of this song, and I immediately was like, because I already knew the concept of the song.
Yeah.
Oh, the other song that made me cry was that fucking Ghost song from Bieber. That's about his grandpa.
With the ghost of you. Yeah. I feel like too, like, you're able to reflect on those more and more of those songs.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like it's changed a bit in the sense that like and we've talked about this in the past, is like I would just randomly learn how to do things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would frustrate my siblings because it'd be like, how the fuck did you do that? But like now,
Frustrate me. I was just always inspired. Like, Jesus fuck, how do I figure this out to do the same thing?
but now it's like, oh, we'll learn how to do these together, or like we know, like we've learned a lot now of like this is the time to pass it on.
Yeah.
Versus like I feel like before Dad, it was like, no, I need to fucking figure out how this is.
Also, we both learned very quickly that we are not attached to materialistic items.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Like when people die, I don't know where people keep all the stuff.
It's amazing. Like, there is mental clutter that comes with someone passing away. There's actual clutter, and I'm saying clutter like just like stuff that they had everywhere, and everybody's at a different stage of everything. So like, you're like, fuck, I just want to get all this out of a room. The way somebody else is dealing with the process, so you kind of have to like factor that in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was like a lot of, I feel like, cleansing that happened. Like, I remember I went through and I just like got rid of a ton of like random shit because they were like what if things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, what if happened in my brain when he passed? Oh, what if happened? Then move the fuck on. This doesn't, and he'd always be like, well, why are you wearing that if you're a little bit uncomfortable? Because it's cool, because it's trying or whatever. And he'd be like, don't fucking wear that if you don't like it, or if you're uncomfortable. Why are you going to live your life being uncomfortable?
This is also another great time to say that Apple has come out with a legacy account.
Oh, yes, actually.
Which is basically where you put one of your contacts as, so that when you die, if they don't have your password to like any of your devices, you can go to Apple and they can unlock it for you
without having to produce a will and testament, without having to produce a court order.
Yeah.
So this is a great thing, is like making sure that you prepare yourself. So fun fact, our dad's will was typed on a typewriter from 1995. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
So Eve and our younger sibling weren't even mentioned in it.
No, it just said Sarah and our sister.
Yeah.
And any additional children.
And then the additional children. And there was people listed that were within it, which there's always backups and stuff like that. But 2 of those people weren't even alive anymore. So
yeah,
this is the whole thing, is like, no matter how old it is, even if there is stuff, that is still binding unless you choose to update it. So you're never too young to have a will, to be totally honest.
Even if it's not an official one.
No, not even if it's like, technically it's like you can have ones that are notarized, but technically if you have it written out and that was your last thing that you stated and your signature or whatever's on it or whatever, they take that as like, okay, that's what you want.
Well, and I think a lot of people too, like the fear of death.
Yeah.
I feel like after Dad died, it was very much like, okay, like I need to get everything in order. Yes, I'm young, but like anything could happen.
Yeah.
And like, obviously you don't want it to be like, oh, all of your assets are freezed and they're like, not like my family that I want to have access to them can't get to them type thing.
It's very much like a transaction. Someone passes away, yes, you're dealing with all the emotional stuff and everything as well, but there are so many things that you have to do within a time limit that are for the government, that are for employees, everything like that. Like, And what you also need to remember is that your provincial, at least in Canada, your provincial and your federal government do not talk to each other. So you need to inform both of them. And 99% of the time, you have to inform every single fucking department they have ever spoken to, or you will still get letters to this day, even after your dad has been dead for 2 years.
Oh, yeah. But, like, I feel like that's a really good thing, too, is, like, if you've lost someone or if you have, like, magically not been able to lose anybody, like, I've talked to some people and they're like, oh, my great-great-grandma. And I'm like, what?
I know, that's my favorite. My great-grandma's dying. Oh, my God, I'm so sad. And I'm like, I will literally look at people like, that is so sad, but I'm really sorry. I don't know how to, like, really respond to that because I didn't have great-grandparents and I lost all my grandparents by the time I was 25. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, I'm not like rubbing in my face like, haha, I win. They hit the finish line first.
I said to Mom, I was like, we were putting things together for like our uncle had passed away. And she was obviously getting emotional about it. And
She's known him since she was like 3 years old.
Yeah. And she was like, I just feel like it's kind of like opening up another door. And I was just like, this is how I think of it. I'm like, I don't know if it's because I'm a healthcare worker. I don't know if it's just how my brain works. The things that you do after someone dies is only for yourself. I won't say selfish because people have the negative connotation, but
I know there's always
it's only for you to process it. They don't care. Nothing's going to change after that. And she was like, okay. And my other like thing that I said to her was that if you think of it, I'm like, if we specifically think about dad or our uncle, they were sick and they were struggling for so long versus I'd like to have a thing in my mind that when they die, that they return back to the time that they were like the happiest and the healthiest.
Weren't in pain. Yeah.
And I was like, that's closure enough for me because for me, I never had a healthy dad.
Yeah.
I never had a dad that wasn't sick, injured, could walk quickly in a grocery store. Like, that's not the dad that I had. My dad always had, and I say my dad because the version of dad that I had was
different than the version that I grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, so to me, it was like he died and I was like, oh my God, he's finally not in pain anymore.
Well, and that's the big thing is like he's finally not in pain anymore. Or like I said, like I'm like, I don't know how else to say it, but it's like almost like a sense of like relief type of thing. Yeah. I know one thing that like went through my brain, and we've talked about this before, is that we saw it as this is not the first time that he had been dead on a table. No. There had been other incidents, with from my understanding, the cement truck thing. And then there was, they had a really hard time bringing him back for other things. Mm-hmm. We felt like maybe he was like obviously you believe what you believe, but he was in a room and there was another dad standing there. Yeah. And there was him. And he goes, they're sitting there going, okay, well, only one of you can go back. Mm-hmm. And the other guy has like kids who are significantly younger, like under the age of 10. Mm-hmm. And he looks back and goes, okay, so I've got one that's graduating that's going to be a healthcare worker. Mm-hmm. Our brother, like, he's good. Like, he has a solid support system. Our other sister, okay, like, she's good. She has a solid support system. And our mom has us. Mm-hmm. She has his family. Mm-hmm. She has her family. Like, but he looks back and said, you know what? Like, I've had these chances so many times before. Bongo, his kids are under the age of 10. They need this person. And that was, I don't know if that's, some people may be like, that is not a healthy justification. But like, that's who he was as a person. So we could see him being like.
But I think the other one that he talked to me about a couple times in the summer before was that he said, if I ever need to get surgery again, and I basically am being told that I'm coming back as a person who needs an increased amount of care, who needs us all the time, that I don't want to be a burden on you guys. I was like, I could see him just being like, you know what? Like, it's going to suck for a bit, but like, they'll be okay.
But like, I raised independent people. I know that they will be okay, even though they don't know that they would be okay. Like, our parents had been together since they were like 19, 20 years old. And like, our mom moved from her parents' house in with our dad
when they got married.
Yeah. So like, that was the person she'd only ever lived with. And it was kind of like, okay, yeah, she's never had this independence, but like, she's helped run all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And she has us. Like, we're there. Like, even though we'll be upset, like, we'll still be stable and we'll all work together as like a unit, versus like if you're a young father and you pass away and then the mom's left with, you know, running every single kid, doing all this stuff and everything. And that's a lot different of a situation, because also those kids are all dealing with it in a different way. And that's an unfortunate thing can happen. And that almost brought like at peace to my brain of like,
It's like justification.
yeah, like he chose to leave. He lived this life. He had this many kids. He was always known as a great person. Like everybody fucking loved him. He was hilarious. Maybe that allowed for somebody else's parent, sibling, whatever, to stay here and have further time.
Like, obviously, too, like, if we were given the option, like, the genie came down and was like, what are your 3 wishes?
Yeah.
Obviously, one of them would be like, I like my dad back.
Oh my God, I feel like he would come back and be like, really? You wasted a whole wish on this? I thought you were fine.
Oh my God, I know. To me, it does not matter how much emotional energy I put into it. At the end of the day, he's still in a dusty box.
I was going to say, he's dead. Like, our type of humor that we have, we're very, like, blunt and, like, funny, where we're, like, moving a room around, and we have our grandfather, who is also in a box. And then we have our father, who is also in a box. And I may or may not have asked Eve to take a picture of me, in which I was holding it, and I sent the photo to my husband saying, look, family reunion.
It also is assisted with views on life and stuff like that. That life is too short. Obviously, we talked about doing this podcast for years. We talked about having a different business for years. But every time it was like, there's other things going on. And now it's like, well, if we don't do it now, then like, what's going to happen?
Well, and that was the big thing too. Like, there was a purpose. He would look at me and be like, well, like, do you really want to go work for another corporate company? Do you really want to do this? He'd be like, I always see you as like a business person, or somebody who is just online to make somebody else happy. Like, not that my only purpose is to not bring joy to my own life, but to bring joy to like other people's lives. I'm funny. I'm sarcastic. So is Eve. Like, why the fuck don't we? And so a lot of the what ifs were taken out. Now, we are going to factor in that there still is a mass amount of procrastination in general. That happens. But that happens because of executive dysfunction. Did I say the right thing for that?
Hey,
Oh my God, go me. And obviously I'm wondering because like my brain was a little like, there's that. So there'll still be a little bit of that, but there's almost more of a push of less, I don't know, less waiting in a way. Like, there's so many times where you kind of start to like wonder about stuff, or like we come upon times where we're like when Dad used to look at us, I don't know if he said this to the other ones, I'll be totally honest. I remember when I turned 13, he's like, so you have a choice. Like, you can grow up and be like a very serious adult, or you can be an adult and be a kid at heart. But he'd look at me and he'd be like, well, like I'd be frustrated about something that I was trying to like learn or something. I'm like, I'm so frustrated. And he'd be like, well, like you learn differently. I wish I was just like everybody else. This is before I got diagnosed with ADHD. This is just like frustration due to trying to like, why can't I sit and read a book without falling asleep? Why can't I do this? Like, why? And he'd be like, don't wish to be like everybody else, because you're going to lose your sparkle. Like, you're going to lose that thing that makes you so different. I'm not saying that thing is ADHD, but I'm saying like, maybe it's ADHD. Maybe it's ADHD.
he used to say, like, don't accept someone's opinion if you don't value the person.
Yes.
And I feel like instead of having him tell us that, it now is like, no, I can do that. Not that, like, without him, we now magically can do stuff by ourselves. Like, anything that we're doing in life, it's like, no, I want to do that. I'm going to do it. We're not defiant people, but, like, we like to do the opposite of what people say.
Sometimes, yes.
So if someone looks at you and goes, oh, well, why aren't you sad? And I'm like, nope, emotions are locked in Narnia.
Yeah.
I'm not having that shit anymore. But, like, I feel like the view on life, too, is I feel like reactions to things, I don't get angry as often. I'm just like, I'm not going to waste my energy on that. I'm going to focus on something else.
To me, that depends on the day.
Honestly, sometimes. But working on something, and if I get overwhelmed and, like, also, could be, maybe it's ADHD.
Yeah.
But I'm able to be like, you know what? No. And I don't have this constant, like, worry either. Like, our dad was very supportive. Our parents were very supportive. But to me, I was always like, am I making them feel like, am I disappointing them?
Even though they never insinuated, talked that way, or did anything. But it was just like, well, am I doing?
Like, no, it's like, no, like, Dad would be proud. I work hard. We're doing things that we want. We're in a happier place, not because he died, but we're in a happier place and we're doing things that we like and love.
Mhm.
And we're not worried about other people's opinions if they don't like it. If you don't like us, then stop. If you do like us, then continue.
Oh my God, that was almost very Manny MU wave.
I swear to God, that man is related to us.
Somehow, no, it has to be. I love
that man. Like, you don't have to Google, are you grieving properly? Because here's a little tidbit. Nobody grieves the same.
Nobody grieves the same. It's just like when you choose to Google symptoms and then all of them lead to cancer.
Oh my God, I have a dot on my back. It's cancer. Well, stop comparing yourself to people. And like for these specific situations, maybe I look over and like, this is not for our actual neighbors, but like maybe my neighbor has a great dad and I'm like, well, I wish my dad was still alive. But no, I don't have to wish he's already left because I sit there and I have a great time by myself. Think of it as all of our family members are sitting around looking at that portal from like a little Nicky in their recliner.
Yeah.
And dad just stands up and goes,
Nice.
fuck you.
Yeah.
He knows that I like, obviously we still love him.
Yeah.
We'll always love him. But we're not like broken.
I also think he would be like super proud of like certain aspects of stuff. Like within a certain amount of hours, somebody interviewed for a job and got that job and has been working in a field that she's been talking about.
Oh, I thought you were talking about your...
Still drove on to then lead our life to where you are now. You did that. And that's what he always said. The world still turns. When I pass away, just remember all the shit that I talked to you about. I feel like in a way he was almost like always preparing us. So that way we were like independent. And
Oh no, like literally the Christmas before he died.
yeah.
So he fucking gifts. He got our younger brother. It was like a little key ring and it said, a sister is a friend forever or something like that. It's something cheesy as fuck. And then got our little brother this like pocket watch.
And then he got my husband a watch with a wallet that matched. So he got him that. And it was just like, oh, that's weird.
They were like super meaningful. And so like, this is not saying like hyperfixate on your life. If someone gives you a meaningful gift, it doesn't mean that they're going to die in 3
No, it doesn't. But it was just like when we sat back, it's like things started to link together. We were like, oh, he knew. And
Moving on doesn't mean you're forgetting them.
Nope.
Moving on means that you've accepted it and you have to adapt your life to without him.
But the full healing helps like after these types of things happen,
Mhm.
after you go through the first couple milestones. So we're talking about holidays, birthdays, stuff like that. Or like my kid going off to kindergarten. Did I think my dad was going to be probably the person who drove her the first day? Yes. But was it our lovely, amazing neighbor who's like her aunt? Yes. She stepped up and was like, I'd be happy to drive you guys to her first day because I don't drive because of that fucking car accident. Having a dead dad doesn't define you, even though I feel like that's what I feel like. But like, have you met somebody else whose dad died?
When I started working, one of my colleagues' mom died
Okay.
from, I think it was cancer.
Okay.
And
Were they close? Do you mind me asking? Did you further
like, was I close?
No, like were they close to their parent as you felt? Okay.
And I just remember us sitting there and it was death day, as I call it.
Yeah.
And I was getting all of like these text messages because some people like to reach out on that day and I don't know why. It's the way that they cope.
It's the way that they cope. Yeah.
And it kept on going off. And at that time I had updated my phone and it had turned off that like thing that like says new message. It just has the message up. And she had walked by and she like looked down and said, man, your phone's really going off. And she just went, oh, and we just both looked at each other and we were like, dead parent club? And she was like, yeah. She goes, yeah, it really sucks.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like, it's one of those things that's like, I'm not like, I'm proud I have a dead dad. But a big thing for me was thinking that like after these like events of like celebration and stuff, when you close and lock that door and you walk back upstairs and you sit on the couch, who was still there?
Yeah.
Because if you lose focus on who's there, that's who you lose the relationships with.
Yes.
You can't lose your relationship with a dead parent.
No, because that relationship bookended. Not ended, but like bookended.
It just like, it doesn't continue in this world.
Yeah.
If you believe in other worlds and stuff like that. The people who are sitting there, your siblings and stuff like that, that's a time for you to be like, I can be the person to you that our dad was to you. Well, or I can help you with these things, or we can like, it's like periods. People don't want to talk about it, but it still happens.
I feel like sometimes it's like super relatable because you end up finding somebody who has maybe like a similar grieving process with you, like my sister-in-law. It was very like it happened. I appreciate that I had them in my life when I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of goes on. Or you have like the other folks where like it's almost
It's the only part of the personality that they can accept.
yeah, it's like that, or it's like they want to press upon you the empathy and grief in which they have, because when they notice that you're processing this thing, they want to then talk about how they process the thing, or how like this almost like triggers them to then process like the
It
death
opens
event.
the door again.
And you're like, oh, okay, I'm really sorry that I made a post about my father passing away and that reminded you that your father passed away and now you're having a bad day. Cool, but shouldn't this technically be the day where I'm upset? Like, I'm so good. Like, I just sit there confused sometimes. I'm like, this is weird.
And I feel like a big synopsis is that everybody processes it differently.
Yes.
If you have somebody in your life who, like a friend who's lost somebody,
Yes.
the easiest thing to do is just ask, what can I do for you? And then just listen.
Yep.
Don't, I remember being like, I hate when people just assume. Like, if I say I'm fine, and I don't need anything, I will tell you when I need something. I've gone through the acceptance portion, and a lot of people don't go through it for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that one day, like, when I meet my future husband, I look at him and I'm like, hey, so
There's no
just to let you know, I'll be cruising down the aisle by myself. I'm okay. Because I feel like a lot of people too, it's like you say, oh, my dad's dead. And it's immediately like, it's broken. And like, that's not saying that you need to be like tiptoeing around them and stuff. Like, if they're like, if you don't hear from them and you're like, hey, how are you? How are you processing that your dad died? And you're like,
Jesus Christ. Are you a therapist? And are you?
so like, if you had someone die, or if you have somebody around you die, talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of different things that you can go to. There's different forms of like grief counseling if that's your journey and that's what you need. If you need a support group, those are there. You have friends and you have family. And if you have benefits and stuff like that with work, do what works best for you. And if you just need to drive around with a friend in the middle of the summer, blaring music, eating French fries and eating ice cream in order to help deal with it, do it. If you just need to sit and watch a show, fine. But if you know, or if you think anything negatively about yourself or think about any form of harm at all, please do contact a health professional.
If you're like, obviously we all have dark times, please recognize those and please don't judge people when they are going through those.
Yes.
And on that delightful note, we'll see you next episode. Always stay warped and twisted always stay warped and twisted as ever.
Well, he will forever, since that was his line.
Oh my God.
Grief doesn't come with a rule book, and we know everyone experiences it differently. Drop a comment or send us a message about what surprised you most in your grief journey. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please send it their way.
Every Monday we got something new. Life's unpredictable, but we're staying true. Through the ups and downs, we'll be here to guide. Come back next week, we'll be right by your side. Burnt out perfectionists, we've got so much to say. Real, raw, and ready to talk today. We'll be back next Monday with more in store. Catch you then, we're always here.